All right, welcome back to another episode of American Pylon. I just realized that in the first episode we did, I didn't even introduce myself. So it's probably not that big of a deal, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Will Mehall, Georgia grad. I had the misfortune of spending 4 years with these guys, 4.5 actually, extra football season
Victory
in there.
lap.
Mm-hmm. But we've got a really exciting show, and I'm excited to talk about a lot of the topics that we have coming down the pike. But first, I've got to say thank you to our sponsor. Now, if you're like me, you're pretty accident prone. And if you're like me, you need the best coverage. That's why we all rely on Ed Freeman State Farm. Ed Freeman's got to be one of the best agents in the state, if not the world. And he's our first official sponsor, and that's why we're wearing these T-shirts.
Exactly, and we do have one extra T-shirt for the winner of our What Color Is a Tennis Ball contest from last week. Shout out to friend of the show, Jess Maria, who texted me and said that tennis balls are chartreuse. I don't know if that's a real color or if that is accurate because I did not fact check it. But
I thought that was red or something.
I don't know, but that's good enough for me. If that's wrong or if you guys don't believe that, then don't text me. Comment on the podcast.
It's at least green.
It's like greenish.
I think chartreuse is a shade
yellow.
of green.
Actually, Roger Federer cleared this up pretty recently and said that it was fluorescent yellow.
He did. Yeah, also friend of the show, Kyron Ochaki, one of my good friends and coworkers, texted me a screenshot of him saying that. But when he had Googled it, he spelled it C-O-L-O-U-R, which is not how we spell color in the United States. So he was disqualified from the contest because of that.
I don't know how good you can be.
But good try, Kyron. Keep listening. Keep interacting. And we'll get you a shirt eventually.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to jump right into it and talk again about Georgia football. And first and foremost, we're going to talk about Justin Fields, a 5-star recruit out of Kennesaw, Georgia, number 1 quarterback recruit in the country. Obviously a dual-threat quarterback, but what we want to touch on is where we think he's going to place as far as touchdowns thrown this season. Now, we came up with a line of 4.5 touchdowns, right? Do you guys think that he's going to be over or under that threshold this year?
Sure. Jimmy, you want to take that since you said
yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and take, if it was 5, I would take the push, but so I guess I'm taking the over, but I would put it right at 5. I don't think he's going to get to throw the ball a ton. I think he's going to get a good bit of playing time. I think he's going to have some packages where he's in for an entire series just for him. But I don't know when he gets in, I think he's going to run the ball a lot. And when we get into garbage time where he's playing, I think he's also going to run the ball a lot because that's just kind of Kirby's MO. I will say about Fields, though, that I do believe that if we get to the point in the season where Fields takes Fromm's starting job from a healthy Fromm, I really think that we'll have the number 1 offense in the country and win the national championship. And I don't want that to come off as saying Fields deserves to be the starter. But if there's a competition every single day and Fields, with his athleticism, and he gets such control of the offense that he takes the reins from Fromm and beats him fair and square, I think he'll be playing at a level obviously at or above Fromm, and he brings some tools with him on the field that Fromm doesn't have that I think our offense is just going to be totally lethal and nobody's going to be able to stop it. I don't think that's going to happen, and I'm not saying we should just give it to him. But that's my bold hot take for the podcast.
Sure. So you went over with at 5.
I went over, yeah. I'm saying 5.
Yep. So I went under, and not for sake of disagreement. That was just my initial thought in looking at it. And then I guess just real quick, looking at even the past 4 or 5 Georgia seasons, dating back to 2013, we haven't had a backup quarterback throw for more than 2 touchdowns outside of Hudson Mason in 2013. Now, granted, going back to Jimmy's argument, I think, with Justin Fields, he's so talented. He definitely has an option to get on the field early and often just because of what he brings. It's not that same skill set that Eason and Fromm had where they kind of bring you the same skill sets. There's definitely going to be a package for Fields. I just think, again, like Jimmy says, it'll be more of a running package. And I just don't see us if he's coming in, I don't see us needing to throw the ball, whether it be in garbage time or whatever, even if you're playing a second-team defense. I just don't. And I don't between the stable of running backs we have, and just at that point in the game when you're really not needing to throw the ball, I have a hard time seeing him grabbing more than 4 touchdowns, more than 4.5.
Yeah, and I agree that like you said, we're gonna have stuff for him because he brings a different skill set. Kind of reminds me of Tim Tebow, Chris Leak dynamic in 2006 with Florida.
Yep.
So Tim Tebow that year, he threw 5 touchdowns. So that's kind of a good gauge for it. I think he ran for more than that, but he did throw 5. So
Sure. Yeah, that's good.
that 4 versus 5 is probably a pretty good number.
I think to your point also, if Fields is able to beat out Fromm, obviously that number, grows. Depending on when, obviously.
I would bet against that happening just because.
Sure.
I feel like
I
Fromm has
think,
such a controlled
and to touch on
offense
that,
right now.
I think Fields to beat Fromm out, even if it's competition week in and week out, that has to be an extreme effort, in my opinion, to outdo someone who took you to a championship last year. I think that the not improvement necessarily, but just the way to measure that performance would have to be incredible.
And that's to my point. That's what I was saying. That Fields would at that point have to be playing at such a high level and have such a solid command of the offense to take it from Fromm. I just, if he's playing at a level above Fromm just from a decision making standpoint, because Kirby's gone on record saying that's one of the biggest things. He looks at the decisions they make in practice, not necessarily what happens based off the throw that they make. But did they at least attempt to throw it to the right guy? He cares about that more than did they, fit it in this window or whatever. So if he has such a command of the offense that he passes up from between the ears standpoint, then his physical tools are just
sure. I mean, they're greater than Fromm's. His ceiling's probably higher. He might have the highest ceiling on the team. I mean, he's an unknown. That's not proven yet. But he just from what they say about him, I mean, he seems to have it between the ears already. I just have a hard time seeing him, even if he were to even beat out Fromm just straight up, even holding on to that, because Fromm is just such a competitor.
Do you think he's going to start a game this season?
Start a game? No,
I don't think he'll start a game, barring injury to Fromm. No. I could see a scenario where against, assuming we play Bama in the SEC championship, where like how Bama did against us next year, where if Jake Fromm's just not getting it done, and we need to say, we need to try something different to where Fromm could actually get benched, even if just for a half.
Sure.
And Fields could come out there and play the second half. I could see something like that happening, even to the point where, say, Fromm got benched in the second half of the Bama game, and then Fields came in and won because he presents more of a dual threat. But then in the first round of the playoffs, say, we're playing Ohio State or something like that, like Fromm taking the job back.
Yeah. So, and this is kind of another just sort of side question, but do you see, obviously him being a dual threat quarterback, do you see Georgia's scheme being conducive to having a running quarterback and success for that? I mean, we're talking about throwing touchdowns, but what about his rushing game?
Sure. I mean, I'd say absolutely. It's not even just Georgia. I think it's the landscape of college football, RPOs, everything. It's what you need to stay competitive. In the arms race that is college football, you need to have the most talent on the field, and we're going to put the guy out there who gives us the best chance to win. And if you look at teams like Alabama, those are the teams you have to get across the hump with. It's mobile quarterbacks. Look at what Saban struggled with as Kirby is his DC, Manziel, Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson. This is that type of quarterback. So I feel like that's just what the college football landscape is lending itself to, is to having that guy. So, and Jim Chaney's smart enough. I mean, I think if anything, he has not shown us to trust him with 2 back-to-back freshman quarterbacks that he will play to their strengths.
That's another reason I think Fromm is going to be given every opportunity to hold on to the job, because Chaney's got to be so sick of having a true freshman quarterback, as well as Fromm played. He's probably so excited to open up the offense a little bit. But yeah, as far as Fields' running ability, I think one thing about having a dual threat quarterback is, even though they have that running ability, you still want them to look to pass first. Sure. So you want a guy that can hurt you with his legs if the opportunity is presented, and that forces the defense to stay honest as far as guarding the run, even when it's a pass play. But Fields has he went out to I believe it was the Nike opening in Oregon, which is a 7-on-7 tournament where the quarterbacks aren't allowed to run, and he outplayed Trevor Lawrence.
I think, was he the MVP?
He was. Yeah. So
he can't use his legs.
He understands that if he wants to make it in the NFL one day, you need to be a pass first guy, even if you have the ability to run. And he's really buying into that at a young age and saying, I'm not just going to rely on my athleticism. I'm going to be a true pure quarterback that if the opportunity is given to me, I'll just break one for 60 yards.
Yeah, I mean, and he has the arm also. I think he has a better arm than Fromm, I would say. I'm not going to say the accuracy's there, maybe between the ears yet. Yeah, I mean, you just the talent. I mean,
just the zip on
it's documented. I mean, a lot of recruiting sites and guys will tell you. I mean, I guess when they watch him and watch film, it's there at a younger age, and that's one of those things too. Arm strength's not one of those things you hear of someone developing. It's just like Peyton Manning, for God's sakes. I mean, great quarterback, good guy, but he was never known for his arm strength. It's just something he never could develop. You know, that's you don't have the biggest arm either, but I'm not saying he has the biggest, but they, you know,
he has all the tools there to where if he can put it together in the film room and stuff, the way, you know, the greats like Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and stuff do, he could be.
Yeah. But just to wrap that up, we are not saying Fields is going to.
Yeah, let's show Fromm a little.
Yeah,
let's talk about Fromm.
I trust Kirby. I was on the Eason train, even not saying one or the other. It's more of the I trust Kirby train, I guess. Is when he said Eason was going to be the guy. I have no reason to doubt Kirby. I think after this year, we should all be in that corner.
Yeah, that's usually my answer. And they say, who do you hope wins? It's like, I don't hope anybody wins. I hope they both stay healthy. And whoever Kirby puts out there, I trust that's who's playing the best in practice, and that's who gives us the best chance to win. So I think it's silly to pick one and root for them, because that's essentially rooting for the other one to be worse. Why would you not just root for them to both be amazing and let Kurt? He makes $7 million a year to make decisions like that. So.
It's locker room talk, but I literally we all want the best. We want the best time for Georgia football. You want to be at the game, high-fiving your buddies, having a reason to tailgate, to go back up to Athens, and whoever gives us that chance to enjoy the best football, which is W's, which is wins.
Yeah,
that's who you want to start. You know.
Yeah. So naturally, that's going to bring us to talking about Jake from State Farm, as his Twitter handle would say. Jake from
State Farm, I think it is.
State Farm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to plug our sponsor here as well, Jim. We're giving him some love.
What's up, Ed?
But
Bulldog Ed.
But Jake from oftentimes considered to be very cool in the pocket and natural back there. In 9 games, he completed over 62% of his passes, throwing for 24 touchdowns and over 2,600 yards. So we talked a little bit about a possible battle for the position, but now we got to talk about Fromm and his line for throwing touchdowns. I think we picked the line at 29.5 touchdowns. What do you guys think over under that for Jake Fromm?
Sure, I'll start this one. Yeah, so I went under. I'm being pessimistic here towards the quarterbacks, but I think our offense lends itself so much to the running game, especially with such a strong offensive line and all that continuity coming back. Having to replace one starter, that's huge in my opinion. I mean, obviously, I think we'll be a better passing unit. I think we'll be a little more balanced, a little more well-rounded. Maybe I'd say last year we were 60-40 passing if it's going off of a number. It might be more. We're going to get more towards that 50-50. I'm not sure. Obviously, we're going to play to the strengths of our team, and that'll develop as the season goes on. But 30 touchdowns, over 29.5, that line we said. I see that being under, just because with the college football's landscape, back to that, with the RPOs, with the stable of running backs we have, and then if anything is kind of an indicator, if as a younger team and looking at last year, we want to milk that clock. We want to, we want to control the ball. We don't want to get up there and be high flying. Not that 30 is like a record breaking or high flying offense, I would say, but I see us lending more towards slowing it down, having a younger, inexperienced defense, possibly younger, less experienced special teams, and then same can be said for some unproven wide receivers leadership. Unproven leadership at the wide receiver position. I just see that being, and we don't have that go-to guy. I feel like we don't have that deep threat, that big. Yeah, we're gonna air it out.
You could argue we didn't have it last year.
Probably not. We stepped up big time. Yeah, so I guess see us if we do threaten downfield more this year. I guess see if we get in that red zone, we just have so many options. That lends more towards the Justin Fields argument, where you're putting another running package in. Demetrius Robertson, on the team. Hopefully, if he can play this year, that's another scat back, all-purpose guy who's running sweeps and such with Mecole Hardman. I just think there's so many weapons. There are only so many snaps and plays during a game. Who are you going to give it to? So I just, in that case, I'm going to say it's going to be under.
All right, so for the second time in a row, I guess we're going to disagree. I'm going to take the over.
This is a record, by the way.
I know. Yeah, we're usually just sitting around being like, Georgia football is,
because it's basically agreement across all fronts. But I'm excited for this.
Yeah. Usually Ty and I just sit around and agree that Georgia football is the best thing ever. But I'm gonna take the over. I went back and pulled Aaron Murray's numbers from the different years he was quarterback. So he actually threw 24 as a redshirt freshman. Fromm threw 24 as a true freshman. And then Aaron Murray's sophomore and junior year, he threw 35 and 36. And Aaron Murray's junior year was 2012 when Todd Gurley was a freshman, so he wasn't, the all-pro Todd Gurley that we're seeing in the NFL just lighting it up right now. But he was probably the best running back that I've personally seen as a single back at Georgia. And he had a great year. He had 1,000 yards, first 1,000-yard rusher since Herschel Walker as a freshman. First freshman 1,000-yard rusher. And Aaron Murray still went out there and threw 36 touchdowns. So to me, I think that we're going to run to open up the pass a little bit. I think teams are going to sell out to stop the run. They're going to continue to just because that's what we're going to do first. So they're going to have to adjust to that. And then we're going to pass based off that. And to Tyler's point, a little bit of a younger defense may put us in some holes where we do have to throw the ball a little bit more. You look at like a Missouri or something, if the offensive line for whatever reason isn't clicking, it's not unrealistic to think we could get down a quick 10-0, 14-0 to Missouri, and I think we have the firepower to come back and win the game. And I trust Kirby to make halftime adjustments and stuff like that, but I would argue that a younger defense lends itself to you into having to throw the ball because you're going to rely on the offense to score those points more.
Would you say, so to that point, I guess my rebuttal would be, if it's a younger defense and they're, let's say you're getting towards your 14 nothing into the first quarter, do you not want to slow it down, maybe give your defense a rest?
That's a good point.
Yeah. And then also, would we say our defense is going to be younger or just thin? Because granted, yes, we lost 3 or 4 linebackers, but I wouldn't say our defensive line is inexperienced or young. I shouldn't say they're not young, and I wouldn't say our secondary is young. I say we're thin. So maybe that comes into the form of later in the game when you're kind of getting gassed.
Yeah, I think our secondary, the starters will be good, but thin. I think our run defense will take a step back because Roquan just cleaned up so many of other people's mistakes. He would go sideline to sideline. Yep. We just don't know who's going to do that. And then I think John Atkins we're going to miss, which we can talk about this on a later episode, but. I don't know who's quite going to step up in that true nose tackle position.
Sure.
At the
we don't have a zero tech guy.
Yeah. Who's going to be that zero tech guy? And those are the 2 most important positions in terms of stopping the run. So I think our run defense will take a step back. But you could definitely make the argument probably correctly that our secondary and our pass defense is going to be much more talented, but thin.
Yeah, and this was something that we wanted to talk about, and now this obviously just lends itself to a perfect segue into who's going to step up and be the leader on that defense with Roquan Smith leaving. Who's going to fill that leadership void for the Georgia defense?
Well, I think to start, assuming you want your linebacker to be kind of the quarterback of your defense, and that's the guy you're going to rely on, I think it's going to be Natrez, assuming he can stay out of trouble and not get arrested and stuff. But he's the guy that has the most experience. He's going to be the guy that's kind of commanding the younger guys that are maybe more talented than him but don't quite know what they're doing yet around. So I don't think he quite has the talent to be the leader of the defense from a statistical perspective that Roquan did.
Sure.
I honestly am not sure who's going to step up. I think we're doing it by committee right now. I think Monty Rice is the closest thing we have to Roquan on the linebacker core right now.
Sure.
But honestly, probably Tyndall and Quay Walker, they say are kind of the closest to him, but they're not even, or they just got on campus. They haven't practiced.
Haven't played a snap yet. So.
Yeah. So, and then Richard LeCount is the other guy that Kirby has kind of publicly challenged from the safety position to take on more of a leadership role. He was a vocal leader in his recruiting class, and he was kind of the head of the freshman class last year, and Kirby's now saying, I know you're just a sophomore, but it's time for you to step up and be kind of ahead of the team.
Sure. So I kind of had a 1A, 1B, because depending. One, I think on the onset, I look at Jonathan Ledbetter, simply because,
that's a good one, too.
He's been there, a lot of experience, big guy, seems very vocal. He's also kind of have an up and down as far as off the field career at UGA. So he's kind of been there, done that, got that. He's been in the doghouse and he's made highlight plays. So he's kind of been all over the spectrum, which I think is very relatable for guys that are young and they're wide-eyed and getting to a college campus that are brand new, and also see a guy who knows what it takes to get to some successful and big-time games. I also think David Marshall, or is it Tyler Clark? I forget who was it. Came on last year. I think it was David.
I think Clark played better.
Tyler Clark, similar to Roquan in that sense, where Roquan was not the Roquan we knew his sophomore year. He also wasn't even practicing in spring last year. Roquan wasn't even, I believe he was injured. Was it the arm?
He had some injury where he didn't play in spring practice at all.
Roquan wasn't even on our radar, and he came on and then blew up and obviously became the player that we could rely on. So I can see that being Tyler Clark stepping into that role, was just seeing from where he came on late last year to maybe being that force up front and, being, again, an upperclassman and kind of just, maybe last year's a tease as to what could come this year and really step up and people can get behind that and, get behind an impact player and someone who kind of is the face of our defense for helping shut down the run or put pressure on the quarterback.
You got Clark and Ledbetter? I
have Ledbetter as my 1A. I'm going to say Clark, if he continues to show that growth and that dominance and that way he can take over a game and really flash, especially on the defensive front. Similar to I would say almost like a Nick Fairley, where he was off the radar. No one really knew who he was going to provide, and then out of nowhere, he's just the face of the defense, and that's who you got the game plan around. And that's just someone the defense can rally around. Granted, not a linebacker, but just someone who can just change the whole complexion of a defense and make an offense, have to game plan around that.
Yeah.
That's easy to get behind somebody.
That would be fun to see Clark play at a Nick Fairley level. But Clark, I know you're listening to this podcast. I want you to hold yourself to a higher standard on and off the field than Nick Fairley. I want to go on record saying Nick Fairley is the dirtiest player in the history of college football. You're a Georgia Bulldog. You're not an Auburn Tiger. You're better than that.
It's just an example of a defensive lineman that I am aware of that just kind of became a face of a defense that was successful and won a championship. So we want to shoot for that. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right. So kind of keeping in the same vein when we talked about Fromm and Fields, and now we're going to take a look at DeAndre Swift. Just some brief stats from last year. 9 games played. He had 388 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and actually a receiving touchdown in the season. He was averaging over 7 yards per carry and 12 yards on 15 catches. So with 3 additional games that he's going to be playing in this season, he's obviously got some big shoes to fill, but the line we set was 1,000 yards. Is he going to be rushing over or under 1,000 yards this year?
So it's funny. When I read this initially, our first line, I said under. As my initial thought was under. After researching a little more and just looking at and even listening to a few other resources and talking heads, I guess, I've switched to over. I'm going to go with over. So just looking at, I guess, last year's stats, we had 2 1,000-yard rushers, or at least over 1,200 yards. And then, like you said, to Swift's on 81 carries, 618 yards, just shy of 700, being the third string back. This year is going to be the guy. As far as, far back as 2014, our the guy has had over 1,100 rushing yards. So Swift's got all the talent in the world. I think he's a big guy. I think initially he kind of got the unfair title of kind of that scat back, kind of that quick guy, but I think he's big enough. I think he's 5'9", 215, which is a solid, thick kid who can run between the tackles and bounce it outside. My only concern is last year he was a third back. He was fresh. After you getting lightning and thunder with Sonny Michel and Chubb, you can argue who was which, but he was a fresh third back. And he was a great third back. I would argue the best third string, if you will, third string back, maybe second string back in college football.
Yeah,
and it's a lot easier to step into that role when you're not the guy. You're not relying on having the carries and maybe having to be that Todd Gurley, that solo guy coming out and carrying the ball 25 times a game. But I'm going to go over just because our offensive line, just the more dynamic and continuity with our offense, and just he showed me no reason not to. And he got halfway there last year on 81 carries, playing in 9 games. With a more improved offensive line, bigger offensive line, I would say, and a better command of the offense with a Jake Fromm at the helm. I'm going to go over 1,000 yards. Not to mention, if you look at 1,000 yards, which is kind of the standard benchmark, that's 83 yards a game. I think it's like 83.5 yards a game, which looking at some of the defenses we faced this year, mainly Tennessee, who finished lowest in last year's rushing defense, 125th ranked in rushing defense. Yeah, that's less allowing 251.3 yards a game.
Yeah.
I'm
Tennessee fans will try
confident.
and tell you that they were the second best pass defense in the conference, but that was because nobody needed to pass on them because everybody was running on them.
But yeah, my
and
final
there's
is
only so many touches to go around. So.
my final is going to be over for Swift.
Okay, so Tyler and I finally agree on something. I'm going over too. To me, I kind of looked at he's the clear number 1 guy this year, which you could argue whether it was Sony or it was Nick last year. I mean, it was Nick in terms of carries. But Sony had a higher average. So Sony averaged about 8 yards a carry. Chubb averaged about 6. So I'll just split the difference there and say if Swift, behind a similar or improved offensive line, and it's kind of a mix of those two, can average 7 yards a carry, he only needs 143 carries to get to 1,000 yards.
Which would be a downgrade for what he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to get more carries than that. That's less carries than Chubb or Sony got. So you could argue, whichever one of them was number 1, 1A, 1B, both of them got more yards than that. The only 2 wild cards to me are how quickly Zamir White comes back from that ACL injury, because I don't think we have a true second-string guy because we like to rotate our guys through. But if you, just for the sake of argument, if you want to call Chubb was first string last year and Sony was second string, so now Swift is moving to first string. So who's our second string? I don't think Holyfield or Harrion, either of them is nearly at the level that Sony was.
Sure. No,
right? Yeah, so there's a huge drop-off between, like, you could argue that Swift has a chance to step up and be as good as Sony and Chubb were, but I think no matter what, there's going to be a drop off to the second string, so that would lend itself to Swift getting more carries.
Yeah.
But if Zamir White comes back, they're saying that that he's, you know, one of the better running back prospects to come out of high school in the last 10 years, so he may be able to steal some carries from Swift. And then the other thing that I would worry about is not worry about, but wonder about is Swift's pass blocking, because he wasn't asked to do a ton of that last year because Sony and Nick Chubb were so good at that. So as the first string back, you've got to be able to pass block. So it'll just be something that, you know, Kirby's not going to have you on the field 60% of snaps and be giving you 20 carries a game if you're making mistakes, if you're not picking up blitzes, if you're not. So not to say you can't do that. We just haven't seen him do it.
Yeah.
And so that's something I even just call a concern for next year in general, is who's gonna be our most reliable guy that is good enough that the other team isn't just like, oh, they're definitely gonna pass the ball, because
that's where I was going next. It's
yeah.
like, are you putting in the guy who protects?
Yeah,
are you putting in the Harriet or Holyfield?
Every team has that one running back or fullback or whatever where the other team can be like, they're definitely going to throw the ball because this guy, it sucks, but he can pass block. And they have a running back that's like, they're definitely going to run the ball because this guy's a great running back, but he can't pass block.
Sure.
So you want to have a guy that's kind of a blend
Versatile.
of those two.
Yeah, no doubt.
So those would be the two things that I think could bump him under if Zamir White comes on really, really strong and comes back really fast and kind of steals carries from Swift, or if Swift proves to just not be a particularly good pass blocker. But I would take the over if I was putting money on it.
I don't see to get away from Swift a little bit into the running back depth. I see Holyfield as a number 2. Honestly, I think where Harrians fit in, he's done great where he's flashed, whether it be in garbage time, not to discount garbage time, because you're playing against the level of competition that you would be playing against necessarily, or behind a second string offensive line, and to flash there, you're showing out for, you know, with what you're working with already, so that's good in itself. But I guess we haven't quite seen what Holyfield has to offer with an ankle injury, with the suspension, with with marijuana coming after that. So he hasn't gotten that much time to see. He's a big, thick kid. I just see with Zamir coming off the injury, being an unknown on a single snap in college, I see him being more that third string running back, I guess. Now, granted, give us 6-7 weeks, maybe, you know, we get a lot more trust in him, and maybe since he's such a thick guy, and maybe he's a good pass blocker and a great runner. But I just see Swift being that clear number 1, and I see it starting off as Holyfield number 2. Yeah, and I'm going to throw Zamir in there in the number 3.
Yeah, I think you could definitely say that Zamir White is talented enough that he's probably going to pass up Holyfield and Harry. And
I think that talent's there. It's just how long does it take him to get a rolling?
I mean, I think it's definitely easy to make the argument that Holyfield was the better back last year. He got less carries, so Harrion was doing something in practice that Kirby trusted him a little bit more, but Holyfield had more yards and more touchdowns on less carries.
Yep. I think he's a better receiving back as well.
Yeah, so I mean...
All right, well, speaking of receivers, and we're going to kind of wrap up our Georgia talk here, but not before we talk a little bit about Demetrius Robertson. Obviously, a incredible wide receiver, number 1 in the nation in his recruiting class, 5-star recruit out of Savannah, Georgia. At the time, he was looking between Notre Dame at one point, was considered to be a leader. He was also evaluating
he
Bama,
was all over the place. He
UGA, Stanford, and then obviously finally ended up in Cal. And for a while, this has been considered a big miss for Kirby on the recruiting side, which is unfortunate. But it looks like obviously they're going to have another crack at him. Some brief stats for his full season that he played in 2016. He had over 700 yards receiving in his first season with the Bruins, with 50 receptions and 7 touchdowns. And a lot of people say there's a solid chance that he could play in 2018, given that he's transferring for personal hardship. Now, I know we talked about this a little bit, and you guys can elaborate on it. But he was granted, I believe, a medical redshirt as well, only playing 2 games in his second season. So my question to you guys is he going to play in 2018? You know, do you think that's a possibility? And what does he bring to the Georgia Bulldogs offense?
Sure. He gets a medical red shirt for his 2017 season, which is huge. That saves the eligibility for him. However, I think the biggest question mark is, can he play this year, in the sense that he's moving home for a medical hardship where it's a loved one. I think it's his mom who's ailing, is what's been reported. And does that qualify him to not have to sit out a year? You know, does that allow him to play immediately? Now, unfortunately, I looked this up this week. NCAA removed the medical hardship in the 2015-2016 college football season. So they removed the rule that allowed you to be immediately eligible due to a medical hardship for an ailing family member. Now I know there are some other like sub laws or categories that say, you know, if the circumstances outside the player's control or outside the family's control, that they'll view it on a case-by-case basis. Though there's still some gray area there, which is the NCAA. There's some gray area there that allows him to interpret however you want that he could play. With that being said, I'm going to assume he does. I just have a good feeling about it, so, you know, whatever that comes from. But if he does, as far as what he offers, I think he's another Mecole Hardman. I think he was a better athlete than Mecole, or not just a better athlete. He's faster than Mecole Hardman. He ran the 100 faster, I think. I can't remember the exact time. But I know he had a faster 100 time than Mecole, which is crazy. I mean, just the speed itself. And then obviously as a true freshman with 50 receptions, 767 yards, and 7 touchdowns, as a true freshman. Granted, they sling the ball out there, so maybe that's just kind of, you know, the average Joe, come as you go.
Byproduct of the system.
Right. But who wouldn't love to have that? That builds confidence. That is huge. I mean, I don't think we have a guy that caught 50 balls in a season in the last, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
Wim.
we have.
I mean, Wims was 45 for 720.
So, I mean, this kid was a freshman.
Year.
So, I mean, just that kind of confidence, seeing the ball that much, being that sure-handed on, you know, just I mean, how many times he was targeted. But anyway, just the lightning in a bottle kind of kid that just, you know, you catch it and he's gone. It's kind of like Mecole. You can catch that quick slant, get you out of a situation real quick, kind of having that sure-handed, you know, receiver. And then not to mention, this kind of goes back to the rushing stats and who's going to get what and over and unders, but just the option to have that misdirection element in your offense. And I mean, Jim Chaney is just, I mean, how many more tools can you possibly work with? So I guess adding that speed, that sure-handedness, and just another weapon to your offense can only benefit us. So
yeah, I would agree. I think Mecole is a good parallel for him. I think he's a little more polished as a receiver from what I've seen. It's like Mecole is a little shiftier. He's a guy that you want to get the ball in space and see what he can do with it, whereas D-Rob is a guy that you just want to send deep and just let him outrun everybody, and he'll go up and, you know, contest a 50-50 ball. They say that's one thing he's really good at, going up and high-pointing the ball and taking it away from a defensive back. So that being said, I'm going to say I would lean towards him not playing this year. It would surprise me if the NCAA allowed that, just because I feel like that's a dangerous, as a college football fan in general, I feel like that's kind of a dangerous precedence to set. It could almost turn kids who get hurt their sophomore year and have to take a medical red shirt into like college football's version of free agents. I mean, you could argue that Jacob Eason could make the same. He could have gone to Kirby and asked not to play. And then, you know, he's basically doing everything that D-Rob is. He got hurt. He didn't really play his sophomore year. He's moving home now. He doesn't have, you know, a sick family member or anything like that, but depending on how much you have to disclose due to HIPAA and stuff like that, he could probably have come up with some reason where it was better for him. I would worry about the landscape of college football at that point, to where you don't want to have to be recruiting kids to stay on the team every single year after all the drama we go through with these high school kids to begin with.
Yeah, you don't want free agency, right? These coaches don't want free agency. They already have, you know, enough stress on them to recruit. Yeah. It's just nonstop, and the landscape of that with social media and just the world never sleeps.
And especially these like freshmen, especially 5-star freshmen, they're just told that they're, you know, the best thing to ever happen in college football their entire lives. So they get their freshman year and they, you know, they expect to play. And if they don't, you hate to have to be recruiting a kid just to come back for his sophomore year. So, I mean, selfishly as a Georgia fan, I do want him to play, but to me, that kind of worries me about what precedence that sets going forward. So
yeah, I mean, I have to think that he was given some good advice as far as of what to do while transferring. I have to feel like he felt like he could play, because I don't see it benefiting him at all to sit out another year. I mean, granted, you know, you've been injured for a year. I can't imagine it. I mean, even if it's a hardship.
What they probably will do if he's not given immediate eligibility is they'll add a year on to the end of his college career. So he's not losing another year after he already redshirted. Right. So, I mean, he's the kind of guy that he obviously, no matter what, he doesn't plan to be in college any longer than he needs to go to the NFL. But they'll probably, you know, symbolically or whatever, just give him a sixth year because he took a redshirt year and then of a medical hardship
we
year.
Won't see that.
We won't see him for it, but that's the NCAA's answer to, you know,
Sure.
we're not going to give you immediate eligibility
Sure.
because there's got to be some thing that doesn't make it just
Some
so
barrier,
easy to
yep.
transfer, but then we don't want you to lose out on a whole year if you had a legitimate reason to leave, so we'll give you a year on the back end. So I think that, to me, that's the most likely scenario, and then he won't use that year because I think he plans to play 1 year for Georgia. 1 year on the field for Georgia, show out, and leave. That's his plan A.
Sure.
Whether it's 2018 or 2019, I'm fine with either one.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and switch gears away from Georgia football. We're going to talk a little bit about the World Cup, obviously the biggest sporting event in our time, and a pretty good final from what I thought. We watched
it was fun to watch.
France over Croatia. I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I mean, France looked so good throughout the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Their players, just faster. It's people are talking about a dynasty. I don't know how much of a dynasty you can have.
And it's every 4 years.
Every 4 years.
Mbappe's 19 though, so he's probably going to play in at least the next 3. He'll be 31 12 years from now.
So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. But what did you guys take away from the final? I mean, I thought it was outstanding. I thought France honestly got a little bit lucky. They had an own goal and a penalty for a handball in the box, and if you take those out, you're talking about a 2-2 game.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say they got lucky. I mean, in that same vein, you could say Croatia got lucky with the blocked goalie.
Yeah, Croatia's goal was kind of fluky.
So,
I think you could argue it should have been 3-1, but I think the spread of the points was pretty fair.
I mean, I think it was
Based
exciting to
on
see
how,
Croatia, right? A small country, 3 million people, which is exciting, to see. I think that's the little. Everyone wants to cheer for the underdog, a little guy, and a good story, So I was happy with the France winning. I like to see that European football, and I've thought about that before. It's a more exciting product. And Mbappe, seeing such a young star, seeing that all the other superstars were knocked out, Ronaldo, Messi, Neymar, they were all gone. Germany flopped. I mean, USA wasn't in it. So for what to watch for, except for a young kid that's lightning fast that can score goals, that was exciting to me. And Jimmy and I we got to go down and watch it in our little hometown soccer stadium, Mercedes-Benz, where Atlanta United plays. They had opened the stadium up for us to go watch it,
and then
prior
broadcasted
to
that
the game. And then so that was a fun environment to be in.
2 games in a row.
Yeah, very fun environment. Entertaining game for sure. Which is most of the time World Cup finals are not entertaining. They end up going to PKs, even with the golden goal when it goes into extra time and stuff. They feel like it's ugly games.
Playing not to lose in a lot of those.
Right. Yeah. Some
scenarios.
teams are so conservative and scared to give up the game because it's such a big stage. Kind of like any other championship game, I would argue, is it kind of starts off sloppy until teams settle in, and then by that time you don't really want to risk losing the thing, so you'll just play out and the best talent wins. When it comes to, I guess PKs, you're sharper there. But anyway, entertaining game, a lot of goals. I'm glad France won. Just the younger team. I mean, it was a young team. I think they were the second youngest team in the entire tournament outside of Nigeria.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I got to say, I was on the Croatia train.
Yeah, I was rooting for Croatia.
I mean,
I think it was such a cool story.
Yeah, and I was, like I said, I was pulling for Germany pretty much the entire time. So I agree with you, up until that point. But when it gets to the finals and it's France, Croatia, I'm with Jim. I think that was so much more fun to watch an underdog have a shot at it. And it seemed like it was
I think Croatia just kind of ran out of gas. I mean, you think about it, they played an hour more of soccer leading up to it because both of their. Did France have to go to overtime in either of their quarterfinals?
I think I want to say so Croatia
went to overtime in both.
Yeah, versus Denmark and versus was it Belgium?
Yeah, that's
or England.
Belgium or England. One of them.
Speaking of which,
that's who played in the third place game.
Game.
Literally didn't know existed until it started.
England
I don't know
and
why.
Belgium. I thought that was a pretty disappointing game.
That's lame. I guess you could argue that this is similar to the Olympics and that it's every 4 years. But I think that any sports tournament should not have a third place game. You're playing for second best loser, which nobody cares about.
Well, I typically do agree. I think it's nice to say and this is a very
Free
little
soccer,
brother attitude. This is a very little brother attitude for USA. If we had a chance, you would at least want to say the best you've made it is. The farthest you've made it is third. You would love to say, I'm third best in the world. Not leave it up to, you didn't make it to the final, so you're just with the rest of the pool. Granted, yes, that's a very small
we're just lucky.
I just feel like if the
NFL
added a third place game that was like the NFC Championship and AFC Championship loser,
it would be a reason to pregame, and we would watch that.
Yeah, we would.
There you go.
And watch
but we find just about any reason to do that. So
yeah,
we don't have a problem.
Honestly, at that point in the season, there's such a finite amount of football left. You're you'll take what you can get. That's why we watch the Pro Bowl sometimes,
and
even though that game is a joke.
Yeah. So speaking of
beat the Jags on New Year's Eve to
Pro Bowls, All-Star, Home Run Derby, I gotta say probably the most exciting one I can remember, and it came down to Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. Schwarbo, yeah.
Harper hit 9 on 9 pitches to close it out, right?
Yeah, you know what?
Was it 9 out of in 40 seconds? Something like that. It was insane.
Yeah, I think
I'm not a bit.
It's almost like his dad was throwing the ball too quickly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big controversy of it is that the MLB has a rule that says in the home run derby, you can't throw the next pitch until the current ball is out of the field of play, which I've been told is to protect the fans because you don't want to have 50,000 people looking at one ball and then somebody gets hit by a different ball.
Apparently, Bryce Harper's dad doesn't care.
Yeah, it's a dumb rule. You can't enforce it. What are you going to do? Take away home runs and everybody would lose their mind. You can't pause it in the middle because that benefits Bryce Harper. He gets a break.
There's clearly an umpire standing behind home plate with his hand up saying, "Don't throw the pitch."
Yeah,
you can see it
then
in
his
the
dad
camera
just
angle.
did it anyways.
Well, I think his dad's piss test is going to come back positive because that guy is huge. He's also basically.
Not to mention, he's a man of the law. He's a police officer.
Is he really?
Yes, he should respect authority.
He had a heck of a beard. I'll say that.
He's basically Billy Mays.
Yeah, he did look like Billy Mays.
Yeah,
he was. It was funny how bad
Mays.
some of the pitches were that he was throwing to Bryce. It was like he didn't care that he was his dad. Bryce was crowding the plate, and he was coming high and inside on him.
Listen, that was exciting. I mean, baseball. Granted, people have their different opinions on how exciting is it. Should you allow performance-enhancing drugs? Or is it more exciting when there's more home runs? We don't have to get into that debate, but that was fun to just see a kid just swinging and just hacking.
Yeah, he
just
flipped
go
the
in
bat
yard
with both hands. When he
that was fun.
I
was sitting there yelling and cheering it on and going. Maybe our maybe producer Dave has a little bit of an opinion on that.
I thought that was kind of offensive.
Dave's more of a resident baseball guy. I mean, I only had a dog in the fight because I'm a Cubs fan. So you had Baez and Schwarbo in there, but
yeah, no, it was a lot of fun watching. I'll tell you the interesting thing was for me, it was like every round was good. I know the end was what it was, but like even the early rounds, I can't remember who it was, but someone had a chance to tie it literally with like a couple seconds left, and they hit the ball and it lands like 2 feet from the top of the fence, which would have tied it up. And he missed it, but even starting there before the ending, which I thought was amazing. I was like fist pumping in my living room by myself
for Bryce Harper.
Yeah, I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, I did not
booed Freddie Freeman for God's sake.
I
do not tell Brent Johnson that, or he will. Well, Brent, you can leave us comments if you're mad at David. Don't text us and tell us that's stupid.
Don't text us.
Please just leave comments.
But yeah, no, I thought it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I had a blast. I'm hoping that it continues to be as exciting as it was this year, and
I think the clock was because it used to be you got a certain number of non-home runs.
10 outs.
It's been that way for the last couple of years, though. But what I did like is they had the on pace.
Yeah,
that was
very cool.
Which was really cool.
And the bonus with if you hit it at least 440, 440, like 440 feet or whatever. That was exciting.
Harper had awesome. He had numbers 2 through 5 of the longest ones, but I think Bias had the longest single home run by a.
Now, what they will say
1 foot, that was classic Bias.
Yeah, and what Schwarbo said is it was harder to hit home runs if you were a lefty because you had the stands that stops in the second deck so much shorter. So that's why Bias went so much further as a righty because he had more room for carry.
I'm going to call fake news because every MLB stadium is different. So you can make it what you want to each benefit. So it changes every year.
Yeah, well, he's talking about specifically in the home run derby.
Well, I know, but that changes every year. The site changes every year. So lefty, righty.
I'm just saying within the Nationals
just
park
like this year.
I know that, but I'm just saying. It changes every year, so it's going to benefit lefties in other parks and righties in other parks.
The better argument is if it was really that hard, then he should have gone oppo. Be a real man. Real men hit home runs to the opposite side of the field,
or just batted right-handed.
So, and finally, we're gonna wrap things up here with arguably the most important topic of the night, and that is what is the best sports movie of all time. I don't think this really needs to be that long of a discussion, to be perfectly honest, because Miracle is the best sports movie of all time, and frankly, that should be shown at every grade school across the country. It's the greatest American win in sports, in my opinion, and it's one of the most iconic. So that is my number 1 pick. If I had to pick number 2, it's Space Jam.
It's pretty good, Space Jam.
Yeah, Space Jam's a good movie. It's a classic.
Also, I'd like to call out,
held up to the test of time.
I would like to call out my brother Michael's girlfriend, Hannah. If you're watching, and I know you are because we have viewers around the globe, she said that Space Jam was a terrible and stupid movie. That's a direct quote. So Michael, you're going to need to think long and harder if you want this thing to work.
Yeah,
out.
Michael, you gotta step your game up.
What was her logic for that?
And
what
is he thinking?
Zero logic whatsoever, and that just throws into the question the entire relationship.
Yeah, I mean seriously, if she wants this to work out, she's gonna.
Hannah, you need to.
We'll talk off camera. We'll take it off the line.
That's
and figure this out. I'm gonna go. Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna go with the Titans. A great soundtrack. Okay,
that is great.
And then it's a true story, even though it wasn't near as close to what the games portrayed it to be. I think. The school. God, what was her name? I'm looking like a good fan
Hannah
here.
High School?
No, it was
something Hannah, right?
We're looking Williams, wasn't it? T.C. Williams.
T.C. Williams.
Yeah,
Boy,
T.C.
God,
Williams.
T.C. Anyway, remember the Titans takes
Oh,
it
I
home
think
for
Hannah
me.
was the school from radio, actually.
We're getting off topic. Anyway, but yeah, so radio could be
Marshall.
up
It was
there.
Marshall.
But yeah,
Permian Panthers.
I think remember the Titans takes. I mean, Denzel's in there. Gary Bertier, God bless him. He even, I mean, just Julius. I think it's just a great movie,
Yeah.
great soundtrack. I mean, feel good story. Watched it a million times. Quote the whole thing. If anyone wants to come over and watch it, I have it on DVD.
That's a great
on
pick.
Blu-ray. So
And I went to
you
a
can
high
watch all the
school that
special
mascot
features.
was a Titan, so you knew literally every sports trip we took, or like if something was going on in the school and they had to waste time, it was like, let's
Yeah.
watch Remember the
Actually,
Titans.
you know
at
what? I'm
Tennessee
gonna-
Titans games before, like big third downs and stuff, they would play the scene where the coach is like, make sure you remember forever the night they played the Titans.
I bet all
That's
200 fans
yeah,
were
all
on
That
their
is
feet,
true.
10,000
yelling
of
and
the Titans
screaming.
fans
And
in
two of those include
2012 when
Jimmy
we
and
were
his dad.
2-14. Me and my dad and the dozens of other Titans fans at LP Field, which is what it was called at the time. We would get fired
Also,
up.
shout out to JT Fanning for listening to the podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
he
glad to have
watches
you.
it. Watches
Glad to
it
have
on YouTube,
but
on
actually,
his
yeah.
smart TV. I'm proud of him for.
We found
That's
out we had a
huge.
couple international viewers just
yeah,
from
we got some Serbia,
YouTube
we got
analytics.
some South Africa.
South Africa.
Definitely
Yeah.
the South African
Yeah, so
market is
shout out to
huge.
UK.
the international people.
Alaska?
That we have found the sports talk radio market in South Africa.
Might as well be.
wide open. So
In
we're trying to-
California,
Yeah.
that country out there. Actually,
Yeah,
back
other
real
country.
quick, back to the greatest American victory in sports movies. I would argue it is Remember the Titans, because the race relations was won there on the field. Now, what better thing to overcome than a bunch of for a miracle, it's a communist sport in hockey,
No.
and having to overcome that whole thing.
That is the
and
least sound logic I think I have
and
ever
then
heard.
overcoming race. So I mean, I think that's the greatest American win
Yeah.
in my opinion, and that's homegrown.
Defeating
It hits you
racism
right
and
here.
defeating communism are both admirable.
Yeah.
So.
It's just that communism's worse and defeating's better.
I'd have to go with
I don't know about that. They're both bad. We are anti-communism
Yeah, whoa, first
and
off, we're not-
anti-racism
we're
on
not
this
getting-
podcast. We're not gonna.
Even begin to.
Yeah,
I'd have to go with Rudy. I think I know the real story isn't quite as glorious as what they painted it on the big screen, but I just love that movie. I always have.
So my thing I'd said before we started filming, that the fact that we live in a world where Rudy was onside when he made that sack when he was clearly offsides, and Tyler Simmons was called offsides when we have multiple angles of multiple stills showing that he was onside when Alabama was gifted that national championship is offensive to me. I know they have nothing to do with each other, but it makes me like the movie Rudy less.
I gotta say, I grew up a big Notre Dame fan, and I can't stand the movie Rudy.
Amen
Maybe
to
it's
that.
because I've seen it so many
We
times.
watched it on the
but
bus back
also,
from Notre
the real
Dame.
Rudy is a huge dick and was caught up in like a Ponzi scheme or some shit. So
Really?
Samwise
for
Gamgee?
real. Yeah.
Or
well, not
the
the
actor? Or
Not the
actor.
actor.
Oh,
no, he,
wow.
bless-
he
What's his
threw
name,
the-
by the way?
bless
What's
the-
the actor's name?
Sean Astin.
Sean,
Well,
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah,
Lord
he
of the
threw
Rings.
threw the
He
ring
is
into the
adorable and he
volcano.
could do no wrong. But the real Rudy, that's
You called him adorable?
yeah, he's adorable.
that's why
He's
Rudy
al-
isn't
He's
good.
also
Rudy-
in Stranger Things.
The best.
He is.
Well,
Very
first off,
topical.
yeah, I was
first
bummed
off-
he didn't make it
oh.
as long as I thought.
Well, you know what's crazy?
well, okay,
Whoa,
spoilers. I was
If
gonna
you
say
haven't
I
that's-
haven't finished season 2 yet.
if you
Am
have
I
not
yet? I
haven't
seen
started
the second
season 1.
season,
I'm finishing The Office for the 13th time, and then I'm gonna start Stranger Things. So for me, I'm gonna go Friday Night Lights. Just to, I wouldn't disagree with Remember the Titans. I would side with Tyler over Will, but
or Miracle.
Friday Night Lights with with Billy Bob Thornton it's such a good movie. It paints such a cool picture of a small town in Texas.
Sure.
Booby Miles is such an endearing character.
And the ball to booby.
Yeah, so I think that's a really fun one to watch. And
It's realistic
movie.
too, right? It's full of heartbreak. at
yeah,
the
it's
end.
based on a true story. I
mean-
read the book. That's actually how most of it happened. They just changed some of the players' positions, but it's actually how the actual season went down. And also honorable mention to Caddyshack, since we've kind of avoided
Yes, I can't believe that one didn't
comedies
get brought up.
so far. Yeah, I would put Caddyshack above Happy Gilmore in terms of golf comedies. That movie's got so many one-liners.
Really
So-
put the sport of golf on the map.
Yeah, you could
It
argue
wasn't
that.
a thing before that.
Yeah, I think I read that Tiger Woods started playing golf because of the movie Caddyshack. So
Don't look that up,
And
but
stopped
that's
playing
definitely
because
do
true.
he
not
partook.
fact check us on that.
Yeah.
If you disagree, text me on that. 'Cause I don't care.
Actually,
Awesome.
comment. Do not text. Comment.
Comment. Do not
Don't
text.
even comment because I'm right.
That brings us to our final point. Be sure to like, subscribe, post, repost, quote, all of this. I think you can find us on YouTube, and we're now on Spotify
and iTunes.
a various amount of podcasts. We'll go ahead and post the various links so you guys
Yeah.
can listen to us wherever
Dad,
you
I
go.
will text you the podcast link because he hasn't learned how to use podcast yet.
But he does know text.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
that's
does
good.
text. Yeah, my mom has actually gotten very good at emojis and gifts.
It's National
Impressive.
Emoji Day
Impressive.
today, I
Mhm.
think. So
Oh,
shout out
okay.
to
I'll have to
National
send her
Emoji
a
Day.
text.
Yep. And also insurance. If you have a life, a home, a boat, anything you want to take care of, Ed
Yeah.
Freeman, our new sponsor, unofficial
Shout
sponsor,
out to Ed.
is the guy you should call.
I don't know that much about insurance, but he's my life insurance guy, and I haven't died yet, so I think he's
He's
doing a
doing
good
There you
job.
go.
Yep.
He's doing good. All right. Well,
right.
from all of us here on
Thanks,
American
guys.
Pylon, we want to say thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you guys next week. Thanks.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.